think Beau is one of those voices that doesn't get talked about enough in terms of how you build those bridges. I get sick of hearing people say, I'm not building a bridge with I'm not building a bridge with a fascist. I'm not building a bridge with a racist. I'm not building a bridge with a sect. It's like, how do you get them to stop being a racist, a sexist, a chauvinist, even though we all know in this heightened age of media divide and conquer strategy, which is so prevalent, there is no question that the way that you build that bridge is by not assuming that every guy who has a beard and is white and lives out in the country is part
is
of
a hillbilly,
or Duck Dynasty.
Yeah.
Like they're all the same. And this is you don't like, people wouldn't like it if you just assume that every black person likes rap music. That's just, you don't want to be pigeonholed. Why would you want to be?
No,
if
it's true.
What defines you, then that's what defines you. And it's easier for somebody like Beau to go and talk to two redneck hillbillies like the ones in Georgia that ran down that black kid and shot him because they thought he was like, or whatever they thought. And then, you know what? Honestly, it doesn't matter. But this divide.
You're talking about Ahmaud Arbery.
Yes, that's correct. And so that divide is very real, and it's not going to change. In fact, it's going to get worse.
I was going to actually say that, like, if I were going to introduce Beau, I would say, and so that would be kind of a good introduction to talk a little bit about Beau. I started listening to him, watching him on YouTube. I mean, at this point, I don't know how far back. It's been a while already. And he just gets better and better. And it's just, I keep thinking that, oh, John is running the meeting. That's what's happening. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you? Yeah, he's leaving. This is Peter.
Oh, I'm Peter. I'm Jen's right-hand person.
Former campaign manager, kind of business partner, but yeah, he's not. He doesn't need to be part of our conversation.
We were just briefly having a conversation about how somebody like you is the type of person that could really be building the bridges with the people who live in rural parts of the country and people who live in the urban, heavily dense districts.
Okay, go.
Yes.
You are not needed here now. And then, yeah, he and I were just sitting here kind of like just, trying to get some extra footage and stuff of us just sort of talking here. We have this very makeshift thing going on. You have grown so significantly over the past year. I don't know how long I've been watching you, but it's been a long time. I feel like it's been a long time already.
It's been wild. This is it's been a surprise. Is my audio coming through okay?
Oh yeah. No, it's totally good. Actually, we could turn it off, but I think we can turn it on here. Is that better for you? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah. So, well, I mean, you are one of now very few people that I pretty religiously watch, pretty religiously. I don't think that there is an episode that I don't watch, or I'm pretty religious about it. And that's become a very small group of people. Just it's become a very small group of people. And you are the person who stays consistent and reasonable and sane and doesn't go off on ridiculous tangents on any side. And that's, I think, you don't go down the rabbit hole. What happened? Why? You don't hear me? Why do we not have audio? No, something.
Oh, I'm back. You came back through. Probably me being out in the country.
Okay. All right. That's where. Yeah. So I know you live in, we call it what, Floribama?
Yeah. Lower Alabama up here. Yeah.
But you are just one of those. I watch a very small select group of people that I would even bother to get news from. And I actually am going to confess this now for the first time, but I actually voted for Joe Biden because of you.
Okay. Who are you going to vote for before me?
Honestly, I wasn't sure I was going to vote for that. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I wish that the Greens had gone with Jesse Ventura or something like that. But no, but I really didn't know that I could, with good conscience, vote for Joe Biden. And more importantly, someone like Kamala Harris. Right. And that's a big concern to me.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel you. There's a definite authoritarian streak within that ticket. But
Not as bad as the authoritarian in the White House right now, though.
well, yeah, obvious. I mean, that goes without saying.
Because where does someone like you fall on that? Because I know you're not partisan, and I know that you're not really part of that whole political circus, but I know that you have some serious concerns about Trump and his refusal to, peacefully transfer power, which is kind of very freaky, and people should, that's all sorts of red flags. And so, I mean, like, what do you do?
As far as what?
Who do you get behind? Like, what are your, how do you encourage people? What do you suggest? Because I know that you think we have to get rid of the fascist in the White House. Like,
right. It depends on the person. I mean, generally, I suggest that people should vote their conscience. I've met a lot of hardcore Republicans that would never in a million years vote for Biden, which is fine. But there's Joe, you can go vote for Jorgensen, My goal at the moment has literally just make sure that any move that is made is taking votes from Trump.
Right. Right.
As far
anyone
as
but Trump.
Literally. Yeah. I mean, like, really anybody.
But then you also made a point that I really appreciated, which is he really needs to lose in a landslide. It really needs to be something that is overwhelming. And so because of that, I did feel a sense of, okay, my vote actually is going to matter in that, like this is a more the merrier type of situation.
Yeah. And in Florida, it really might. I mean, it might, if there are enough people who were going to go green or stay home that showed up, even just an extra % or two.
Yeah,
it could have a significant impact.
Yeah.
And for people who are not, viewers of my channel who are watching this, I'm not actually a big fan of Biden. But yeah.
Yes, nor am I. That was a very hard sort of choice. Like, that wasn't easy.
No. But I mean, between the alternatives, if I have to choose the person I'm going to be working against for the next 4 years, I would much rather it be Joe Biden than Donald Trump. So.
Okay, so this is something sort of along those lines of Trump, and I will ask him that at some point. I will get to that. But you did an episode recently, which I loved so much, and I actually ended up posting it on my Facebook and like just really putting it out there. And it's something I always thought, where you said, like, if you were the president, the first thing you would do would be sit down on the floor and have every expert from every field and every person come in and just learn as much as you possibly can. You'd set aside 2 hours a day. And it's like, that's exactly what I would do. Like, the idea of having access to that information is amazing. And then you said, like, anybody who leaves the Oval Office and they're not smarter after their amount of time there. And I don't remember exactly what you said, like if they didn't deserve that job or they just like, whatever, but that's something that I love about your show is the curiosity element.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, my stance long-term is we're doing something that is a generational fight. I mean, not to plug the show, but I mean, that's really what it is. So we have to move people along, and it's going to take a while to get there. The easiest way to do that is with ideas and education, exposing people to new things. And I would suggest that the most successful presidents, those that accomplished the most, were the ones that were like, I know absolutely nothing about this topic. I need you to put together a team of people to sit down and explain this to me like I'm four. They may have put up a front of knowing a lot in public, but once they were in the residence, they were like, yeah, I'm gonna need some help with this.
Yeah. And speaking of that, like, so let me ask you, who's your favorite president? I know you're a huge history person.
Just because of his personality, I would probably say Teddy Roosevelt.
And my campaign man, Peter's sitting there going, because that's his favorite president. He's like, yeah, it's all Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some policy issues that we would have to work on, but as far as personality and the
Yeah.
way that he behaved, you know, that's he is definitely more my style. Well, you have to make sure that you're not offending white Southern voters. Well, I'm having dinner with a black guy at the White House. I mean, I liked he knew when to push a social issue to an extreme. And sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I also, something I thought of about you, and it's something that I noticed that I felt during this campaign. And I see you very much in the same way, as you're this bridge between populations that wouldn't necessarily otherwise bridge. Like that you are definitely somebody that can communicate very well between different demographics that might not otherwise listen to different types of viewpoints. And that's a gift. Like that's a gift. And I appreciate that so much about you, but you seem to have an in with a community that a lot of people, especially progressives, would ever even think to address.
Yeah, it's actually been kind of surprising as this took off. I was like, wow, when I was doing it and it was just, a small group of people, I wasn't really that concerned about the people in my immediate rural area running into my work. I mean, it's very progressive. It's not something I would expect them to ever run across. And then I realized they did. And not just did it not upset them, many of them were like, yeah, that's actually how I feel about that. Like, why do you have a Trump sticker on your truck? Well, because I'm a Republican. Not if you believe this, you're not. And it's been interesting for me just seeing the people that I never would have expected to hold those beliefs in my local area, finding out that, yeah, they do. So I don't know that I don't know that progressive can't reach this demographic. It's that I don't think they try, and I don't think they speak, as you said, they don't speak the language down here.
Right. Well, that's a big part of it. That's part of being like a bridge between communities, is being able to really get along in different groups of people and speak the languages of different groups of people. And it is different. I mean, there is that. And one of those things that makes me want to ask you about is, what do you think happens if Trump loses? What do you think happens with those groups, those, his followers, his supporters, the people that you probably know really well?
It's going to depend on how badly he loses. That's why, like, if it's a landslide, I think that's it. I think for the most part, it's over. I think they're going to realize these ideas are not going to be sustainable, and they'll probably walk back a lot of their statements from the past. If it's close, I could see them contesting it, saying that this isn't, they stole it, voter fraud, whatever. It has to be a landslide. If he wins, I think it will embolden them, and I think that not so much in this area, because this area in particular because we're close to Destin and Panama City, there's a lot of progressive ideas, especially when it comes to race and stuff like that, that you're not actually going to find in like Alabama and Mississippi and the real deep South. So here, I don't know that it would be as much of a problem, but definitely when we're talking about the deep South in general, it will embolden them. You'll see a lot more rhetoric. You'll see more Confederate flags, that sort of thing. But I think the main thing
Armageddon. You're not picturing that,
unless it is really close and the right set of circumstances presents. I don't see a lot of people going beyond what already exists, because I think most people understand that when they go out there and they do their little checkpoints and they're standing around with their rifle and everything, yeah, that looks cool and everything, but real life, most of them don't know what they're doing. And this has become very clear as this stuff has progressed, that when they encounter resistance, they tend to fold. When that resistance isn't just college kids with cans and it actually turns into shooting, they might decide, hey, this isn't really what we wanted. This was kind of a show of force. Okay, let's calm down. So if there is violence, I don't really foresee it being a lot. I think it would calm down pretty quickly, because it's all fun and games to think about it, but when it's people right next to you getting shot, you tend to wake up to the reality that this may not be the best way to solve our differences.
Right.
Maybe that's just wishful thinking on my part.
No, I think that you're right. I kind of feel like there is a lot of more bark than there is bite. I think that it is a lot of posturing. And I think that, we're going to continue to see an increase in violence, I think, for different reasons at these different events. But I don't think it's going to be one en masse like group of, right-wing, supremacists coming out, to take over if Trump doesn't win. Like, I don't see that.
I don't think so either. And I do think that I'm hoping for that landslide. And if that happens, I think this whole thing calms down very quickly.
Yeah. This is why I ended up sucking it up and voting for Joe. That's why, because you said something like that, and it's like I told you, you're like my Mr. Rogers. I mean, if you say I got to be a landslide, I got to vote for Joe. And I'm going to tell you, in the past year and a half, where people have been on my case about not committing to do that, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of heat I've taken running as a Democrat, but not being willing to, be yay Joe and go right in with Biden and all of that. And the fact that I did that because you said it was important, I'm just saying that's a big deal.
Well, just understand that if he wins, January 22nd, we're going to have to hold his feet to the fire, because he is not going to give us what we want. That's not on his agenda.
No, and I actually, when I voted for him, I did this conscious effort in my mind. I made this mental note that, okay, I have to fight this much harder to make sure that it's not Kamala Harris in 4 years. I cannot, we have to fight harder to make sure that they don't continue than we would actually if it's Trump. Because if it's Trump, I mean, who knows? We could all just be gone in 4 years and it won't really matter. But Biden will just keep everything just very status quo. And
right.
Go back to sleep.
That's a huge concern of mine, is that people are going to, oh, we won. No, we didn't. No, we didn't win. This is a tourniquet. It's not closing the wound. So,
and that's what we're about. That's the concept. I don't know if you were what generational change, what this is this idea of transforming politics into service and really changing the dynamic of how campaigns are run, first of all, and how we ran our campaign as a service-based campaign, but just in general about how representatives are supposed to be community servants, and that's their job. So sort of just shifting the paradigm is what we're doing, and supporting candidates that are like-minded in that sense and don't take the corporate money. They're not beholden to the Democratic Party establishment, just candidates that are actually wanting to represent their people, whoever their people are. If you've got conservative people, then you should be a conservative representative. That's my biggest concern, is if you're properly representing your constituents, that's it. And that's where so that's really where we're not partisan. And really, we just support anybody who's not part of the machine.
Right. I mean, realistically, the candidate that is going to win and is going to be representative of the community in Andalusia is not going to even remotely resemble the one from San Francisco. They're going to be different. They have different values. And I don't know that I don't know that they should ever really try to meet in the middle until the people do. I mean, their job is to represent. if they're sticking with what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, that's the theory. I mean, that's ultimately the goal, is that if you seek to represent your community and you're not taking special interest money, then inevitably you will have policy that reflects the will of the people. I mean, right now we do not have a functioning republic, right? Because our policy does not represent the will of the people in many cases. So if you had people that were serving constituents, then it would balance out. The conservative places would probably eventually lose to progress. Generally progress just works. But it would just be a majority rule situation.
Right. And as Andalusia catches up to San Francisco is moving ahead. There's always going to be that divide between progressive and conservative. It's just a matter of making sure that, we're conservative, but we're still moving the country forward. We're not trying to go back to the 1950s. But which would be, it is, yeah.
Well, that's when they say things like, we got to go back to the good old days, like that time when everything was so nice and simple, for white men. Things were so nice and simple for white men.
Right. And the reality is they're basing that on Andy Griffith, and they're basing that on a TV image that didn't really exist, because most of the people that I hear say that, if it was the 1950s, they'd have hookworm. I mean, it isn't, that image wasn't everywhere in the country. That was a select area. That was the ideal that everybody was supposed to get to. Most of the people in the 1950s did not live that life. So
no. But I think that in my perception, it was a time when there was the ability for somebody to work. I think unions were definitely a bigger deal. And I think that we at least had this semblance of a labor party. There was sort of at least this person, there was some semblance of rights for workers that were being, I think, more in the forefront. And now that's just gone. I mean, in Florida, of course, is horrible.
Right. There's been a slide away from the working class actually voting in favor of their own interests. They have bought into this propaganda where, I mean, there are people who make $30,000 a year who are really genuinely upset about the idea of a massive tax increase on those making more than 15 million. I'm like, this is never going to impact you, right? Realistically, unless you win the lottery, this is never going to, you will never think of this again, other than the fact that it's going to help pay for, education and healthcare and all of these things that your job should be paying for, or at least helping with, and it's not.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too, the connection between healthcare and labor, and that, they have to basically collectively beg for whatever healthcare plan they may or may not get through whatever their union, whatever their collective bargaining agreement is. And with Medicare for All, that automatically eliminates any union from having to negotiate for their healthcare. I mean, it just automatically is a help to working people, obviously. So it's a connection, but down here, it's just really bad. I mean, as a right to work state, we have it's pitiful, really. And,
it is.
I mean, it's really bad here. And I was just asked to ask you, so how much responsibility do you place on mainstream media in terms of really sowing discord and really fanning flames and divisiveness and, a lot of how much of it is real versus how much of it is being, sort of propagated on mainstream media in that way?
I think a good amount of it is real, but I think they helped create it. I put a lot of responsibility on them, but not in the sense of, they're making it up. More in the sense of they've sensationalized so much on so many issues that there are people who genuinely believe that there are candidates advocating for abortion after birth, because they've just pushed this envelope of of sensationalizing and trying to outdo the other pundits and everybody trying to get the clicks, and it's all advertiser driven. And I mean, I know how it works. That's what it's about. It's about getting that headline. That's going to drive people to it. And that was part of the joke. You've been around long enough to know my earliest headlines were so confusing. They were just random words. Let's talk about 4 things that make no sense. And people would click on it. You don't have to have the world is going to end tomorrow as your headline in order to get views and clicks. I hope
that's
I'm still
all very sensationalist. It's very sensationalist. And obviously I understand like from their perspective why they're doing it. It's just it's unfortunate that so many people are so like subjected to it and succumb to it. I mean, they just believe it because they see it. And then it's just true because the guy on TV told them it's true. And I see things like where you're blaming the Russians or it's the Chinese. I don't know how many more times Trump can fit the word Chinese into a discussion about COVID. Mm-hmm. And it's to me, it's very telling, and it's definitely, signaling. I think it's very signaling, and it's kind of, it's scary.
Right. And because of the 24-hour news cycle and the 4 p.m. crew playing off of what the 10 a.m. crew said, people hear stuff over and over again. I've had a whole bunch of people ask, why haven't I even brought up the question that this might not be real as far as Trump being sick right now? And I'm like, because I saw it on TV. It doesn't matter if it's real or not at this point. We have to act like it is in order to reach the people that need to be reached right now, because the people that are still on the fence are those people who are typically lower information, getting their information through network TV. And as far as they're concerned, he's sick. It's a tragedy. We have to with that, it's that scene that I watched it on TV. It already happened, and we have to play within the rules. Sadly,
it's on his end. Yeah, you're breaking up and getting choppy, and Peter's looking at me, and I'm like, no, I know it's on your end.
Yeah, it's definitely on.
He lives in the boonies. How far are you from what's your closest town? Like, where would you go to the supermarket?
I don't know, maybe Definiak Springs.
Is that a city? Where is that?
Okay, so the easiest way to describe where I live is between Tallahassee.
See, and now he left. Now he's gone. He'll have to come back on. There he is. You got to unmute. Somehow. Oh, are you there? Are you there?
Back. I feel like I'm back.
You're sort of back. You're back, but you're kind of still choppy. Is there a storm? I like it when I hear this storm in the garage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's yeah. Yeah. The shop has a tin roof on it. So
is that? So that's your? I just figured it was your garage at your house.
Oh no, that's way out there. That's there's like people have asked why I don't live stream from there. I'm like, because I could barely get it to live stream in the house. I live in that stretch of trees in between Tallahassee and Pensacola. There's literally nothing here. You could say there's Bonifay, Chipley, Definiak Springs. It's a bunch of towns nobody's ever heard of out here.
So before COVID, what do people do there? Like, what's there to do?
Most people would go down towards Panama City or if they wanted to do anything at all.
But you're out there. You're remote.
Yeah, I am remote. Very.
Are you a hunter?
Not as much as I used to be, and it really is that comedy routine. I don't like getting up early. That's really why I don't. But
and what is what is hunting there? Is it like birds of some kind?
In this area, you can get anything from, let's see, you could get duck, deer, boar. Okay. That's all relatively common if you wanted to go out and do it. But again, I haven't done, it's been at least 10 years since I did anything like that.
I actually would be interested in going hunting, but I am very supportive of the concept of hunting. I don't eat industrial farmed animals, but I would eat anything that was caught wild. It's just this sort of this psychological thing for me that's part of the food chain, but our industrial agriculture is not part of the food chain. And it's also mean and inhumane. So I have, ethical considerations, but I would totally go hunting. And it's just, I've never been in a situation where I would have to be with someone who really knew what they were doing, and it would have to be the right circumstance.
Right. We've got there in this area in particular, because it's also, there's a lot of poverty around here. And for a lot of people, it's a hobby, but it's also 100 pounds of meat in the freezer. There's a balance there that exists. Yes, it's a hobby, but it's also partly for survival out here still.
Yeah, which that's the reason. It makes sense to me to hunt for food. I don't have a problem with that. So, which is a perfect segue into one of my favorite topics with you is about guns, because nobody knows more about seriously, in such a reasonable manner. And one of these populations of people down here that I deal with regularly are the Moms Demand Action group. I'm sure you're familiar with these women.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just, obviously it's a very single issue, for them, and they just are not reasonable. And they're just not reasonable. You can't say, well, this is the information. No, banning assault weapons, got to ban assault weapons, got to ban assault weapons. That's all they're motivated to do. And it's very frustrating. And so, yeah. So you understand what I'm talking about. And especially being somebody who ran as a Democrat and is generally progressive, this is something where I'm very libertarian, and I really do have this libertarian streak to me, and I do believe in our constitutional rights. So it matters to me. But what is the best way to convince people, seriously, without watching 3 episodes of the banning assault weapons trio, that's just not, it's not a reasonable response to the problem?
Generally, when you're dealing with people like that, you are dealing with people who aren't, you're right, it's not about reason. They have a fear. And they want their fear addressed. So I tend to use a series of questions. The first being, do you believe that Trump is a fascist? Yes. You almost always get a yes, or he's a proto-fascist or whatever. Then go to, do you believe there are camps? Yes. Do you think only the government should have guns? And you'll get a pause for a split second. And that split second is where you recommend that they look into the issue a little further. But you've got to get it right in that little window.
So it's using fear in the other direction, essentially.
Really, that's the only way. That's the only way I've ever had success. Yeah, I'm sure there is another method, but I haven't found it.
I try to recommend the 3-part Beau series on the banning assault weapons because it was extremely informative. I always thought of that as it just seemed like almost catchphrasey Band-Aid type of approach to something that's clearly so much more massive. And I'm not just going to say, oh, it's a mental illness problem, but just, right. And also we're just too far gone. That's just the idea of banning something that exists in the amount that it exists. It's just, I just don't see the point.
Right. I've tried because I had somebody from Australia ask, and I actually broke out the numbers. And because I say that a lot, I'm like, we have enough guns to arm every man, woman, and child in the United States. When I'm talking about it, I say that. And I realized that people overseas did not realize that was literal. I'm like, no, we have 360 million people. We have 420 million guns. We have enough for everybody. And you can see the look on their face of like, yeah, it's an issue. We're going to have to work on this for a while.
How do you ban that? It's just so, it's just not the feasible solution. We're too far gone. That's really how I feel about it. And that any attempts to do that will be met, like you had said, with just equally worse problems. Like it's not going to fix the problem.
Right. And we don't have any standard approach to it. I've got a friend who was talking about moving out here from California, moving to Florida, and she owns a pistol, and she was asking like what she would need to do to have it okay in Florida, because she lives in California where there are a lot of restrictions. I'm like, nothing. She's like, well, who do I need to report it to? I'm like, no, but we don't even have registration here. like you just bring it in and you've moved here. That's it. You should get a driver's license pretty soon at some point, but I don't really even know that that's required. And it's just, it's interesting to see that side of it. Because she was talking about moving out here and then buying a rifle, and she was asking what the requirements are. I'm like, they're still at Walmart. You're not a felon in Florida. You can go buy it. It's really that simple. As soon as you move here and you're a resident.
I mean, when I was campaigning, we did a lot of small business canvassing, and I would always go into the pawn shops, go into the gun shops, whatever. Truthfully, I'm walking a strip mall. I'm walking the strip mall. I don't care. And I had a volunteer on my campaign at one point. He's like, "Oh, you don't want to go in there. That's the gun shop." And I'm like, "What?" I totally go in there and talk to them, but that's exactly who we need to talk with. But I definitely see people in there filling out all sorts of forms. Like there's definitely like people filling out forms and paperwork when I've gone into places and I've seen people procuring firearms.
Right. In Florida, you still have the background check. And basically they make sure you're not a felon, that you don't have, I want to say a mental adjudication, a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. There's a whole bunch of stuff that they check for, but this literally gets done before you leave the store. It's a quick process, but there is paperwork involved with it, but it's all for the feds, and the state does not keep a registry. So if you buy a rifle and you want to, sell it to your producer 2 weeks later, there's no law against it. There's nothing stopping that, and there's no reporting that needs to take place as far as I know. But again, I'm 10 years out of the community when it comes to
right.
Stuff
but
like
it's so woefully not properly regulated. And that is something that I've always thought, like, I am never in favor of banning things. I'm just not, that's not something I do, but I am fully supportive of any and all regulations regarding safety issues that affect public health and well-being, just like we regulate cars. Like I don't have, that's not a problem to me. But and something else that was brought to my attention is to make a clear distinction between supporting the Second Amendment and supporting the NRA. And,
right.
and that's a huge distinction. But I think to a lot of those groups, and I know like the Moms Demand Action, like I do think to them, those things are pretty synonymous. They're very black and white about how they see it. It's like no guns, no talking about guns, no kids playing with guns, like toy guns, no guns.
If you're running into people that are that partisan about it, you might actually have some success showing them the SRA, the Socialist Rifle Association, or Gun Owners of America, or all of these Second Amendment groups that exist specifically because they really don't like the NRA. Because there's a lot that the NRA does that not just does it upset your average liberal, it upsets gun owners. There was a time when the NRA was actually supposed to represent gun owners, and then it's kind of morphed into this thing that tends to represent the interest of gun manufacturers rather than the owner.
Right. I mean, I remember, I grew up with, my dad had guns in the house. I grew up having a very, very strong, respect for the firearm. I remember him taking me to the gun range when I was 13 years old and just showing me what that was about and how to use it. And then I was never to touch it, like that was it. And never did I do so. It wouldn't have occurred to me. Like I had I think the proper level of respect and slight fear, respect for the weapon, fear of my father, in terms of if I were to like get in that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like and this is something where I definitely am going to catch crap from the lefties on that, because I'm not anti-gun.
Right. I mean, well, and I think that if we could ever get, again, it's one of those things of speaking the language. And right now, the anti-gun crowd and the pro-gun crowd, they are not speaking the same language.
No.
When it comes to like when when it comes to safety and security, most gun owners, most of the Second Amendment crowd, most of the pro-gun crowd, they're like, yes, lock your guns, for God's sakes, lock up your weapons. What's wrong with you? You definitely need to do this. And they would oppose it just because of the shall not be infringed, but you are not going to get massive protests about having to lock up your firearm.
There will always be people that complain about every little regulation. There's going to be people that complain about every little regulation. But by and large, most responsible gun owners are supportive of regulation of firearms. It's just not, like my dad from when I was growing up, he's always like, it always was weird that there's not like a national registry of everybody who has this. And, why is there not a record of that? This is, we register our cars.
Right. So it's funny because the reason we don't have one is twofold. One, the innate paranoia that exists within a lot of right-wing groups. And second, the federal government didn't want us to have them. One of the reasons that the the Second Amendment exists in its original intent was so the average citizen could back up the U.S. military in the event of an invasion. If you go back to a lot of the propaganda movies of the 1980s, like Red Dawn, for example, there's actually a scene in it where the Russians go in and they take the paperwork from inside the gun shop and they use that to track down and see who has a gun. So there's this idea that we don't want a list and that gun owners don't want their name on a list because of this. The funny part about it is most of the gun owners who believe this are members of the NRA and voluntarily put their name on a list.
That's ironic.
It is. I mean, it's like there are a lot of things that when people sign up for the NRA, they don't realize what they're doing. But
well, they think it has to do with they're just, Second Amendment, but have you ever tried to ask any of those people about their other amendments, their other rights? Because where were they when we were losing 4, 5, and 6? Because that's
right.
Always very interesting to me. It's like, what you have the right to protect yourself from government tyranny, but they've already taken a lot of your rights away. So, what's the gun going to protect you from at this point?
Right. And if they can take all of your rights with the exception of your right to own a firearm, they don't need to take the firearm.
Exactly.
Because they know you're not going to fight back.
Exactly. There's nothing to do. Right. So I think that's a big part of it. I think a lot of people just don't realize, and it's not as sexy as the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment gets everybody all, gets everybody all riled up on every side. They get very defensive about everything on that. It's personal. It's very personal.
It is.
And so there was something else I wanted to ask you is, how do the people that that are not in your political circles, that are just people that are just regular people living their lives? I know that there's people that I've spoken to here where I'm like, you do realize there's an entire group of people that don't even know who their representatives, don't care. It's just that they are so far removed from anything political that they just can't see it. And I would imagine a lot of these types of people.
Mm-hmm. Around here, those that were not active in politics, 4 years ago, going up and down the highways around here, you would see Trump signs everywhere. You would see bumper stickers everywhere. You don't see that right now. It's like Matt Gaetz completely lost support from this little area. And we're in this district. I don't know if this is true everywhere, but around here, they don't have nice names for them. And these are average people. These are not political people. These are people who are really upset at the way he behaved. And that's the humorous part to me, is that a whole lot of Southern conservatives overlooked the way Donald Trump behaved in the past. And then when he started doing the exact same thing, stuff that you and I knew he was going to do over these 4 years, it really eroded his support. Again, for most of them, it's not policy. It's not policy. It's the fact that he got into the car and risked the Secret Service agents today is probably going to have more of an impact on people than the fact that he lied about it the whole time, as far as in the South, because that's a basic decency thing rather than a policy thing.
Yeah, it's Southern hospitality.
Right. And I think that's actually what's eating away at his support more than anything he's done, because most of them couldn't name a policy if their life depended on it. But they do know that he has done these things that are just against good manners, and that's mattering more to them.
He's very dishonorable. He's very dishonorable. Like he has no honor whatsoever. None. And I honestly don't mind like the crass and the rude and the way, none of that bothers me at all. I care about policy. I care about what are you doing. I don't really care about those things. But he just has no honor or integrity whatsoever. Just none.
Right. And a lot of
Wait, now we lost sound. Yeah. We lost sound again. This is what happens when people are in the sticks. I hear you. All right, there you are. You're back.
Okay. I actually got a little signal that time, said my internet connection was unstable, which was a nice way to say that.
So now you're at home, because that's a virtual background, right?
Oh, this is paper.
Oh, that is paper. Oh, so you've got, okay. That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I have a little art business, and I would do shows and put my art up. And actually, this is the background was my burlap that I used to hang up my artwork on when I did my shows. My office is like the Rube Goldberg. This is like the most ridiculous studio setup you can even imagine. Let me ask you, since you are a person of history, where do you think, like, if you could go back in one time where you think would make the most impact to make the biggest changes to where we are now? Like, where did it go awry? Where did the timeline go most askew in terms of where we are right now?
Wow, that's tough. As far as the United States goes,
yeah,
from the beginning, when we, there were founding fathers who wanted like everybody to vote in the beginning, who wanted a very representative democracy. They didn't want it to just be landed people. They wanted everybody to have a say. And well, pause. They wanted every white person to have a say.
Right.
So poor whites would be able to vote as well. I think that had that side won the debate, I think it would have changed a lot of things a lot faster, because the lower classes would have had more sympathy for slaves than the aristocrats did. And I think it would have influenced policy a lot faster had that happened. But I mean, it's all a guess. I think that's where we went wrong. It was like day 4, we messed up.
At least you brought it into the realm of our current, government. I mean, if you want to say day 1, I mean, really, when we landed here, when our people came here from where they came from is where they went wrong.
Right. We definitely have a lot of issues and a lot of things that we have to fix. And so when you're trying to figure out a time to resolve it, that's hard. I think at that moment we probably would have done the most good to sway that argument. Aside from then, it's a matter of continual progression, because once the establishment gets established, you've got to fight against it.
So what do you think is should be our biggest priority in terms of policy? Like, what do you think is the most important thing to happen for policy?
I would say that climate change is probably the most pressing. And then from there, the socioeconomic issues that hit everybody but marginalized and communities more. The economic issues would be next. So
Climate.
those two, and oddly enough, if you did it right, one would solve the other. If we
So do you support the Green New Deal, or at least the concept? I mean, because really all that is a mission. It's not even, concrete policy, but
I support, honestly, a lot of the things I want go further. Like, I definitely support the idea of taking drastic action. I think it needs to go a little beyond regulations and stuff like that. And the jobs program, all that stuff is great, and that would help with the other issues. But I think that we should focus more on making each individual home more sustainable, in the sense of, planting your yard and putting your house on renewables itself, and all of that stuff. And it's easy for me to say that way out here, where people actually have room to plant. But I think that may be something that we have to look into. Maybe the urban center is not the best structure. And you've already seen the Chinese government start moving away from that and realizing very quickly that there's a lot of issues that come along with everybody being packed together, because they, for a while, had this idea of doing mega cities, because they thought it would save on infrastructure. After some recent developments and how quickly it spread, they were like, no, we need to spread everybody out a little bit more, and they're going back to that. I think there's a happy medium there.
I think that it's important to bring, like, the idea of just sustainable communities in general. And that's something that is very important to me. And we, I'm working on that with a community partner of mine, and really trying to, help food deserts while simultaneously teaching people some, self-sustainability. And something I wanted to ask you, because you strike me as like the best prep person ever. Like, you must be so prep. Like, I imagine you probably have like kits organized, like alphabetized, like for every possible contingency, with like your family's name on their own kit. What do you think really the average person in Florida should have? Like, like, what is a typical bug out kit? Like, or do you have a recommendation of a place where people should look to put that together? Because some of the ones where you buy them, they're really expensive.
They're incredibly expensive, and odds are they're not really what you need. You need food, water, shelter, a knife, medicine. That's what you need. Fire. You need that in your bug out bag. Those you can build yourself with stuff in your house for like $40. I think I actually have a video on that, like a scavenger hunt bug out bag.
Everybody should check that out, because I think it's cool. Not that I'm, suggesting this sort of paranoia. I think when people think about that, they picture like the doomsday preppers and the people that are really prepping, that are, building, whatever caverns in the ground and stuff. But I'm just talking for your average citizen, not in a paranoid, the world is ending way, but a hurricane could come and you could be without power and food for 72 hours kind of way.
Right. That was when Michael hit here. I grabbed the bag, dropped it in the thing. We had everything we needed. Now, in Florida, if you plan on sheltering in place, you need water and food too. But again, it doesn't have to be crazy. That can be a box of number 10 cans, because you're going to need food until the National Guard comes. And for those that don't know, I have a whole bunch of kids, so you may not need number 10 cans. Those are the big ones. But you may be able to get away with like the normal grocery store
How
ones.
many kids do you have?
There are 4 currently living here.
Wow. So how many are there total?
I guess you could say 6, theoretically, depending on how you count.
Is this like a blended family situation?
Kind of. It's more of, unofficial adoption, I guess would be the right term.
It isn't you and the wife, because, and what's funny is, I haven't ever seen the wife. I've only heard the wife. And so she's kind of like, Maris or Vera, you know, like one of those people that might not really exist. It's just the voice. But yeah, so you're not talking about her having all these babies is what I'm saying.
Right. Four are,
Okay.
yeah. Um, so
That's a lot of kids, man.
it is. And yeah, yeah, there's a lot of them. So water and canned goods, you'll need those two in Florida.
Yeah.
Or if you're, in California, you would probably want a little bit more in your bag so you can take it with you, because if there's a fire or something like that, you're going to need to.
Right. So it's a different concept whether you're sheltering in place or whether you're going to have to evacuate, obviously. And I think that's a big distinction.
Right. I actually have a playlist now on this, on emergency preparedness, and it goes through all of it. And you're right. You do not have to, you don't have to go overboard. You don't have to become paranoid. It's not a huge thing. I mean, you are right. I have a lot of this stuff, but
Oh, I'm sure.
So I used to be a contractor, and my wife was, an emergency deployable nurse. So yeah, we could build a hospital if we needed to, but your average person does not need this. And that really wasn't anything we planned. It was more profession led us to have all of this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, my husband's a physician, so we actually he has built up quite a nice little medical kit. So if there is an emergency, actually he's like just short of being able to do like a full on, general anesthesia surgery here, and we'd be good to go.
Nice.
So let me ask you, we can wrap up, and I want to ask you, like if you could think of, when we say generational change, we really are trying to shift this paradigm, but like, what would you like to see in terms of a big change in the next generation? Like, is there something that, like a message or something that you would like to see take more of a route and, go in another direction?
I would like to see younger people, the people below us, the people, the next generation down, organize into the communities that they already are in online, take those to the real world and create some change. That's like, for me, it's not ideas. They have the right ideas. It's more the logistics about getting them from point A to point B.
Why do you think that things like climate crisis are so easily denied by people on the right?
There are a lot of people who at some point are just like, I'm not learning anything new. This is why we have problems. You have people saying they're rewriting history. Yeah, and if you've been paying attention, we've been doing that the entire time. When we get new information, we change it. We change how we look at the past. This is even more dramatic when you're talking about science. And I think that they're just some people hit that point where they're just like, I'm not going to learn anything new. They have lost that curiosity. And
we have a president, so he's very symbolic of that. I think that's very, because that is something that I thought too. Like if I had access to that information, I even tell my kids, if I had access to Google when I was a kid, I would have never left my room. I would have been looking up everything. I mean, I'll go down rabbit holes all the time. I could spend like hours going into the difference between frogs and toads, like no problem, like just sitting there, and moths and butterflies, whatever it is. And I'm down that, and then I'll be like an expert on that. And then I'll know everything that there is to know about whatever it is. So I would spend hours. I would do that too. I'd have like the head of the Smithsonian come and like give me a personal one-on-one, that would be like the coolest thing ever. And he probably doesn't even talk to any of them. He probably doesn't talk to anybody.
Right.
He has no curiosity. He is so uninspired.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. I have such high standards for what I would want somebody to lead the United States, and like even under normal circumstances, they don't meet them, and then we get this guy who just doesn't even come close, and it's infuriating on some levels.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, and but I also think of him as the perfect representative of what we have become. I mean,
Right.
we are the Biff Tannen of the world, right? We are those bullies. We are the ugly corporate bullies. And so really he is us. And I think that's what freaks people out. It's like this looking in a mirror. It's like, you don't like him. He is, he is exactly what we deserve from what we've done. We've earned that.
He is mask off America. I mean, no pun intended, although that's really funny now that I think about it. I mean, that is, you know, we always put this kindler, gentler image up front, but that's not who we've been in a very, very long time.
No. And I think that for me, I always said that with him. I said that back in 2016. It's like, he will facilitate a revolution. And had Hillary won, I don't think we would be where we are. I think that you would have a lot more people have put their heads back in the sand. I think a lot of people still think if only Hillary had won, everything would be fine. I know a lot of those people. They truly believe that Trump is the problem and this is on him. And I try to tell people like, no, that's not how any of this works. Like, that's not how history works. Like, that is not, there's a slight delay in how things come about. Like, it's just not right. But they really just don't like that he's mean and ugly. Like, he's just, right. They just, he hurts their feelings and they don't like that.
Right.
Yeah. So let me ask you before we go, what projects are you working on? I thought I saw something about a second channel. I am extremely tech challenged. So just know that I only watch you on YouTube. I click the YouTube button and you're one of the ones that comes up. That's it. So I don't know. So talk a little bit about what you're working on.
Okay. So channel that one of.
Oh, now it's patchy. Of course, now it's patchy because I asked you to talk about what you're working on.
Yeah, a little symbol that says internet connection is unstable.
I know. It's sad. And at least it says unstable. You know, that seems very politically correct way to talk about it.
We're already filming it. Actually, other than just me.
Yeah, it's broken up. It's so broken up. So can you, if you hear me, at least do me a favor and get me whatever like links or any information so that people can check out what you're working on, because whatever it is, I'm sure it's really good.
Okay, will do.
Yeah, see, now I hear you again. So so quickly say it again, what you just said before, like what you were doing.
We're launching a second channel that is going to be more produced content. It's going to be actual documentaries. We're going to go out on the road. It won't just be me in the shop. And we will help people set up community networks.
I heard that part. All right. So I definitely got the part where you're going out on the road and you're going to be helping people setting up community networks, which is amazing. And that's sort of what I'm trying to do here. I like that. And just trying to forge coalitions and get communities working together. So that's awesome. I appreciate that.
All right.
All right. So everybody heard Beau's having a second channel and it's going to focus on being out in the field and forging community connections, which is so it really is the most important thing to do, is work within the community and local, and everybody help them. You know, I mean, that's really how we're going to get anything done.
Fact.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. And I mean, do you ever introduce yourself by your actual name, or do you just go Beau and that's it?
You know, even before Beau, people actually knew me as Mick.
Oh.
So like when I hear my real name, it's so weird.
All right, then I don't even have to tell anybody what your real name is. It could just be our secret. I won't tell anybody. But I appreciate it so much. Thank you for coming on and agreeing to do this. I know that it's not something you do often.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Beau. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So I'm still recording right now so we can finish up right now with what I'm doing. And yeah, that was really cool. That was honestly to me like what it would feel like if I got to talk to Mr. Rogers almost. Like he really is my grown-up Mr. Rogers. I have to check, like, if Beau says something is cool, then it's cool. I mean, he's very sage. That's what it is. He is very sage. And I appreciate that. And it is, anybody who knows me knows that I appreciate wisdom, and my dog's driving through. Anyway, so we're out. I'm going to end. And